Am I the a-hole for getting a mother of two arrested because she assaulted me at work? I, 19 male, work in a fairly popular chain retail store. Everything started about 3 days ago when I was working the closing shift. One thing to note about our store is that if an item is not in stock, the customer can ask us to order the item to any branch of their choosing to be delivered the next day. The woman in question walked through the doors about 2 minutes before we were closing and went straight to the register where I was working. She looked rushed and started explaining that she was there to collect an order she had placed. I politely explained that the area for collecting deliveries had closed several hours earlier and that she would have to return tomorrow to get her delivery. She began pleading and explained that she had been too busy taking care of her children, who were with her, to come earlier. I told her that the delivery area had its own separate staff and that anyone with access to that room had already left for the day. She seemed frustrated by this response, but eventually left with her children. Since I was scheduled to work the following day, I knew I'd have to deal with her again. And I was dreading it. She had been condescending and rude, and her children were loud and chaotic, knocking over a bunch of stuff that I had to clean up afterward. The next day, I was about halfway through my shift when the woman came up to my register. She placed a candle on the counter, which I rang up for her, and then she started demanding that I track her order because the collections area couldn't find her parcel. I checked the system and saw that her order had been placed over a month ago, so I told her that since she hadn't picked it up within the 14-day window, it had likely been sent back to the warehouse. She flew off the handle, yelling that it was all my fault and that if I had just let her get the parcel yesterday, everything would have been fine. I tried to explain that the parcel would have already been sent back weeks ago, but before I could finish, she picked up the candle and threw it at me. It was one of those heavy candles in a glass jar. It hit me in the temple, shattered on the floor, and I fell back, hitting my head against the wall. As I was trying to get up, she started screaming even louder and throwing other objects. Security rushed over, detained her and her children in the back until the cops arrived, and my manager told me to wait in the break room. After about an hour and a half, my manager came in with the officers. They took my statement, and when they asked if I wanted to press charges, I said yes. When I got home and told my mom what happened, she called me a heartless a-hole. She said I should have considered the impact on the woman's children and that I wouldn't understand how hard it is to be a mother. I initially thought I was in the right, but after hearing that, I started second-guessing myself. So, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Wow, your mom freaking sucks. Single mom or not, actions have consequences. Not the a-hole. I'm still struggling that OP's POS mother heard that her child was assaulted, and she took the attacker's side. Parents like OP's mom are sadly common. If I was OP, my mom would have said something similar. My dad would ask, well, what did you do to make them do that? Becoming a parent requires little more than fertility and a successful biochemical reaction over a period of time. What about the impact of learning from mom it's okay to assault someone and get no consequences? Your mom is wrong. You're not the a-hole, but she is. Yeah, I'd say the children have already been impacted by having that woman as a mother, so having her sent off to jail might actually improve their situation. If she does that to a random stranger, then what does she do to her children? She could have caught a candle upside her own head. Some people fight back like the Twisted Tea Man. That would have at least taught her kids if you F.A., you will F.O. Next story. Am I the a-hole for ditching my friend at airport for doing a stupid prank? I went overseas with 3 friends. We all live in the US and decided to take a short vacation to Seoul, South Korea. It was an amazing trip overall, full of great food, shopping, sightseeing, and laughter. We got along pretty well the entire time, though one of the guys in our group has always been a bit of a class clown. He thinks everything is an opportunity for a joke, even in situations where most normal people would probably exercise some common sense. Anyway, when it was time to fly back home, we were all tired but in good spirits. One of my friends had her partner picking her up at the airport, and I was the designated ride home for another friend since we live about an hour away from the airport. The plan was simple: get through customs, grab our bags, and drive home to finally sleep in our own beds. Easy enough, right? Well, not exactly. When we got to immigration, the officer asked the standard question, "Where are you coming from?" Without missing a beat, our resident comedian decided it would be hilarious to respond, "North Korea." Mind you, we had just come from Seoul, South Korea, not even remotely near the DPRK. You could see the officer's entire demeanor change in an instant. Next thing we knew, we were all being pulled aside for secondary questioning. My heart dropped. They separated us and started going through our passports, asking for proof of where we'd been. I showed my itinerary, boarding passes, and even some credit card transactions from Seoul, bubble tea, museum tickets, restaurant receipts, all that. After about an hour, they finally believed me and my other friend and let us go. But the jokester? He wasn't so lucky. They held him for 2 to 3 hours before finally releasing him. By that point, it was late, and I was beyond done. I wasn't about to sit in the arrivals area for hours because of his idiotic stunt, so I went home. He ended up booking a hotel by the airport and renting a car the next morning. Later, he called me, angry that I didn't wait for him. I told him flat out, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. You're lucky you didn't get arrested or lose your passport. So, am I the a-hole? For me, the top 2 situations for not ever pulling a prank would be 1, at the airport, 2, when being held at gunpoint. In that order. You are not the a-hole. My sister once joked that the camping gear in her backpack was a bomb and was detained for hours and strip searched. She's not generally stupid, but does have an unrealistic opinion of her comedy chops. What an utterly imbecilic thing to do. You did exactly the right thing. He already got you pulled into secondary and wasted your time with his immature stupidity. Then he expects you to hang around for another 3 hours? He's lucky his moronic butt wasn't sat in a jail cell all night. My uncle learned this lesson when crossing into Canada with a camping trailer. He made a joke about being from a state where weed is legal. They then spent the day waiting while customs completely emptied out the trailer, took apart every sleeping bag, camping stove, etc. He is a quirky retired guy with a very introverted wife, and by the time they got to my parents' house, my aunt had either done a lot of yelling or said nothing at all. Couldn't tell which, and I don't know which is scarier. Your friend fafoed. Good on you for not wasting your day waiting. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my boyfriend if he can't be quiet during the day, that he can't use my car for work? So first of all, I'm 100% aware of how controlling the title sounds, but it's not like that, so please read. We are both 26, and we've been together for 6 years. We're not married. About 6 months ago, we decided to move across the country. We know no one here and have no help. His car had various transmission issues that were too expensive to fix, so we sold it and now share one car between the two of us. It's a car that I purchased recently, and I pay the note and insurance 100% by myself. He uses it more than I do, considering he needs it for work. He's a laborer, and I have a full-time work-from-home position. We talked about this before we moved and decided that since my field has a lot of work-from-home opportunities, I would do that until we have 2 vehicles again. When we first got together, it was the other way around. I didn't have a car, but we both worked in person. I often ended up lying outside my workplace for hours before it opened so we could both get to work, and I'm not willing to go back to that. Anyway, both of our hours are typical, 8 to 5. However, he likes to take days off for various reasons. Whether he's sick, taking a mental health day, etc., and that's fine. Except on those days, he plays video games for hours and is incredibly loud. I mean, yelling things that are not appropriate levels of loud. We have a 2-bedroom apartment. One bedroom we sleep in, and the other is our office/gaming room. I worried this would be a problem, but he kept assuring me it wouldn't be. Yet, when he's home during the workday, which happens once or twice a month, he can't keep quiet. He tries but doesn't, and he isn't willing to stay away from games until I'm done with work. I feel bad asking him to be quiet during my work hours. I've suggested moving his desk into the living area where there's more space between our setups, but he's not willing to. I would, but we're low income, and I'm not comfortable with the background it would give me for work. My job is call and video chat oriented, so it's imperative that we find a solution, but nothing I suggest works. This is my first good job, and I don't want to lose it. My boss has confronted me about the noise multiple times. Fortunately, my management is understanding, and instead of firing me, they said if I don't have a quiet place to work, I'm welcome to come into the office. I don't want to lose my job since I wouldn't be able to contribute to our household costs or pay for my car. After speaking with my boss yesterday, I sat down with my boyfriend and explained the situation. He said he shouldn't have to be quiet in his own home and that it's his space too. I agreed, but reminded him that I'm not asking him to be quiet for me, but for my job. He said he'd be more quiet. I reminded him we've been over this multiple times and nothing changes. So I told him if he can't stay away from games Monday to Friday 8 to 5, then I'll return to work in person and he'll have to depend on Ubers and co-workers to get to work. He said that isn't fair or reliable. I think it is. I don't know what other suggestions I can possibly make or what else I can do. We're a team, and in this economy, neither of us can afford to live alone. We have a great relationship otherwise, but I feel like we've hit a wall with this one. Am I the a-hole? Am I being unreasonable? Not the a-hole. You keep using the word we, but he isn't acting like part of a partnership. You need to look after yourself to keep your job. Also, if he's taking off work often enough that this is a problem for you, he's probably going to be on a list to cut if or when his employer has a slowdown. Keep this in mind with how you conduct yourself going forward. For instance, build an emergency fund in just your name, and think about whether living on your own when your lease ends might be better for you. You have more options if you think and prepare for the possibility. This is really what stood out to me too. I'd reply to him and say, do tell me what is fair. At this point, I've been straight up told I need a quiet space to work or to come into the office, or I'll be fired. I have suggested moving your gaming desk. You said you don't want to. I've asked you to just not play from 8 to 5, and you say that's an unfair ask. I've said fine, I'll go work in the office, but then I need the car, and that's not fair. So now it's your turn. What do you think is fair? Not including, I'll just try to be quieter, because that hasn't worked. And then pay attention to his suggestions, which I'm willing to bet are, you go to the office and pay for Ubers. Because everything you've shared shows him to be wildly selfish and thoughtless, so if that's where he goes with his suggestions, you need to take that seriously. Not the a-hole. He's being an idiot. You've repeatedly explained that your work-from-home status depends on having an appropriate home setup, which does not allow for him to be screaming profanity in the background. He's refusing to accommodate you for that. So if that means you end up needing to work in the office, that's on him. Anyone want to bet that this is just one example of many where he doesn't respect OP at all? I wonder how they split the housework, and whether she's picking up stuff he leaves around the house because she's home all day anyway. Last story. Am I the a-hole for not wanting a relationship with my siblings if it means apologizing for living with my dad? I, 20s male, have several younger half-siblings from my mom. None of us have the same dad, and my dad was the only known dad of the bunch. They were all conceived after my parents' divorce, and my parents divorced because my mom cheated a lot from the sounds of things. My dad had 50% custody of me until I was 9. Then my mom's neglect of me and my siblings became more obvious. He always knew and fought for custody. And he won full custody, with my mom needing to meet certain steps to be granted visitation. She never tried to meet those steps. She never tried to get back into my life. My siblings were left with my mom. CPS was involved, but they never removed them, and they never got any real help. I didn't have a whole lot to do with them once my dad had custody of me. He didn't want my siblings to be in his care, and I wasn't safe in my mom's care. We didn't have any relatives to step in and facilitate it either. My siblings started giving me the cold shoulder after a few years of me living with my dad. I accepted it, and contact completely ended for over a decade. Then a few months ago, my siblings contacted me through a social media and said they loved and missed me and wanted a relationship. We talked, and at first it was nice. But then they let me know that they felt I was wrong to live with my dad without them. They thought it wasn't fair that I had a dad when they didn't, and that I didn't have to live with the neglect from our mom anymore. They said I should have told my dad to buzz off and banded together with them. I told them it wasn't fair to expect me to throw my dad away because they didn't have or know theirs. They were really pissed that I didn't regret it and didn't feel guilt for living with my dad. I told them I hated knowing they were there, and we talked to CPS to try and get them help. It wasn't enough in their eyes. More of our conversations went that way, and after several weeks, I decided that it wasn't worth the trouble because our relationship was not going to be healthy continuing like that. They wanted me to apologize for living with my dad and spoke several times about how it wasn't too late to say F you to him and stick with them instead. So they were still expecting me to go no contact with my dad, so none of us would have one. I told them we clearly couldn't have a relationship unless I apologized for living with my dad and then went no contact with him, so I'd prefer no relationship with them. They got mad and said I was picking him again and that we're siblings and need each other. I told them they could have a relationship with me without trying to dictate my relationship with my dad or shame me for being protected by him. They won't, and they told me I should be fighting for them since 9-year-old me didn't. Am I the a-hole? Not at all. That's crazy for them to expect that. Exactly. So they think a 9-year-old had a choice in the matter. Do they hear how crazy they sound? I know jealousy is an ugly thing, but I now see how idiotic it is too. OP not the a-hole. They are clearly too damaged to think logically. A 9-year-old doesn't. But I think the assumption was I could have fought back so much that Dad would walk away from me and decide I wasn't worth the effort. The sad thing is, they are so isolated and ignorant of what a normal life should be that they want to drag you back into their world of poverty and mistreatment. Misery loves company is a real thing. Don't let them undo anything your father worked so hard to create for you. How many siblings do you have and how old are they? I have 5 siblings. 3 are in their 20s too. The youngest 2 wouldn't be teens yet. Not the a-hole. They are jealous that you had a better upbringing than them because you had a father who fought for you. While their upbringing was tragic, you shouldn't damage your relationship with your father for your mother's mistakes. Your father has no responsibilities to your half-siblings, which is why they are so resentful of him. And how many of them, if the tables were turned, would give up their father to help you? If having a relationship with them is conditional, it is better not to have one with them. I don't think any of them would have done what they expected me to do. All of us wanted to be out of there. Maybe they would have tried to make their dads take the others in, but maybe not. The reason I didn't throw tantrums and tell my dad to do it is I knew they weren't his kids, and I'd bet if any of their dads had shown up, they'd rather leave than risk him walking away because of an ask like that. It's a big ask to take on so many kids who aren't yours.